Welcome to episode 11, and in this episode, we are going to create the framework, the basics of the selection system. Let's just get right into it and go right into our unit logic folder. We're going to create a new C# script. We're going to call it selectable. And the first thing I'm going to do with selectable is I'm going to find my unit, and I'm going to place the selectable script on top. Now let's just open this script up. Now I'm going to immediately get rid of these start and update functions and go with on enable and on disable. First thing I'm going to do is create a Boolean variable, and I'm going to call it selected. I'm not going to make it public because I'm going to create functions that other scripts have to go through in order to maybe alter this variable. And another thing I don't want occurring is the player to be changing it in the inspector. I want this to just be something that you see in the inspector to tell, is this unit currently selected? So I'm going to take advantage of the Odin package which I bought. It is available for $50 on the asset store. It looked like something pretty well worth it to me. And for anyone who's involved in this project, they will be able to have access to it. Basically, when you buy an asset, it gets imported into the project, and it's just a bunch of series of scripts. Since Unity is not just a versatile video game maker, it has tons of functions for creating customized editors for itself. So I'm going to type I'm going to, at the very top, make sure that I'm using Cyrenix dot Odin inspector. I'm going to say for this attribute, I'm going to type up here show in inspector and comma read only. That'll let us see it but not change it in the inspector. And in order to get access to this public information to this information for other scripts, I'm going to create a new function. I'm going to call it, it's going to be a public bool. It's going to be is selected, and we are going to return selected. I'm going to create another function, public void, and I'm going to call it toggle selection. And if we're selected, say if we're not selected, then selected equals true. Otherwise, selected equals false. And I'm going to create a new region. I'm going to call it events, and we're going to have several events or happenings. Here's all the events right here. We're going to have one for on selected, on deselected, on hovered over exit, and on left clicked. And now I'm going to make a new Boolean, similar in concept to the last one, and this is going to be called hovered, or instead hovering over. Going to paste the show in inspector read only and change the tooltip to say indicates if the unit is currently being hovered over by the user. Once again, I'm going to make a public getter function, and it's going to be called is hovered over. And I'm going to get rid of this on left click because to me it seems like something that that's going to be covered by the input manager and could be a remnant from a time where I was not entirely sure how that was going to work. And I'm just again making sure to add comments to my functions so that way they're clear to whoever is programming. And now I need to go about figuring out how to the logic behind figuring out when these events should be called. The first function, or the next function I'm going to make here, is going to be on left clicking. or on left clicked, or on left click. This needs to be a void on left click. The first thing I'm going to do is find the input manager dot singleton dot on left click up, and we're going to subscribe once on left click. And we're also going to take this and we're going to unsubscribe when this is disabled. Because if we want to make a unit all of a sudden no longer able to be selected, we can just turn off this script and it will immediately get rid of this function from it will stop listening to it on the input manager. It will unsubscribe. And if we want to turn it back on, well then it will subscribe. And on enable gets called at the beginning of every game, or when the object is first instantiated. So whenever there's a left click that's been released, every single unit that has this selectable script that's enabled should have kind of its hat in the ring, like, oh hey, someone just clicked. Did they click on me? If they clicked on me, well then now I'm selected. But if I was selected and they didn't click on me, then I'm not selected. Unless, of course, they were adding to the selection by pressing, I think, Control or Shift, or removing from the selection by, say, maybe Alt. But let's start off simple, and then we'll add some more nuances. I'm also going to go up here, and when we change the selected, I'm going to call the event on selected dot call, and then on deselected dot call for this toggle script, because that is one case where that event needs to fire, and it's going to fire here as well. We're going to check with that mouse manager to see if it we're going to get the hovered units. We're going to see if it contains this game object. Now if it does, well then we are now selected equals true, and we're going to call on selected. But if we're not, then we're going to call selected equals false, and on, I need to actually make this else if selected equals true, selected equals false. So if we clicked and we were not, or and we don't click on the unit and it was selected, then now we need to make sure that it is not selected. We need to call the appropriate event on deselected.call. In fact, I'm using these two things quite frequently, so I'm actually going to come up here to underneath toggle selection. I'm going to make another, or before toggle selection, I'm going to make another public void select. Oh, nope. Select unit. And I'm just going to take this right here, put it in there, and then I'm going to make another one called public void deselect unit. And I'm going to add this functionality right here. And now we can put select unit here and deselect unit in the place here. So now I'm just gonna put select unit, and then down here deselect units. That's gonna save us. It's always good to turn into a function redundant code. The way things are a little bit easier. And yep, we have our tooltip there, even in Visual Studio. Real quick, I'm going to go back to the mouse manager because it appears that, well, we can get distinct colliders using order by and distinct here. I need to make sure, I need to do the same thing for the hovered units list. So I'm going to say hovered units dot distinct. I'm going to say u or you know what, distinct dot to list. And that should hopefully make sure there's no redundant ones, because I think an error that's happening is when we try to select it, it just, who knows, that might solve our problems. I'm also going to, outside of this for each loop, make my distinction there. An even better solution to the distinct seems to be proving to be just getting the transform root unit, using this function kind of before we go into this if statement, and then if it is not equal to null and we do not already contain this game object, then add it. For some reason, I could tell from down here that it was making a list of the same thing several times. So this adds a little bit of correction to our mouse manager. Alrighty, so it looks like the problem with selecting was that it actually was selected, but in the editor something was going awry, so we need to have this be serialized field, and then we can use read only, and so I'm just gonna, instead of show an inspector, gonna put serialized field here, and so that should be good for is hovered over. I'm also going to change something. For some reason the release doesn't feel right, so when it detects the initial click of the left mouse button, and let's go up to enable, and we're gonna do on left click down instead, and then I think it will feel more natural to Armada. I want to see things firing, see things selected as soon as I've clicked on it. So we have our selected. We'll be able to tell if it's selected here in the inspector right there, and so yep, I click on that. I click off. It goes away. Super exciting. But I want to make this else if I don't want it to deselect the unit if we're holding down shift. So we're going to check the input manager dot singleton dot we're going to make sure that we are not pressing shift for this. And up here we're going to check to see if we are not pressing Alt, because Alt is going to be our key to remove a unit that we're clicking on from the selection. So if we're not singleton.alt, that secondary key, if we're not doing that, then we can select the units. Otherwise, here's another path to deselecting the unit. And so that's kind of how we can add some more nuances to our selection behavior. Lastly, unfortunately, we are going to need to have an update function. Whoa, Rivet. I wonder how that happened. Update. And that's going to be to tell if we're hovering over. And so how this is going to look, sadly every frame we're going to have to check to see. Perhaps there's a I'm realizing now, perhaps there is a way to not do this, to not have an update function, which is preferable. It's going to be a little bit more convoluted, but checking through an entire array every frame for every single unit is going to add up quite a bit of memory that we want to save for other things. So I'm going to say public void call hovered. Public void no longer hovered. So these two functions are going to be called now hovered and just stopped hovering, and they're going to change hovering over equals true, and on hovered over dot call, and then we're going to do pretty much the opposite for this one, on hover over exit dot call. And now we're going to put it up to the mouse manager, and this will be a part of its update function. It's going to be looking for, we're going to type for each hovered units, actually for each game object, H in our unit, U in hovered units. We're going to go through this list every single time, and we are going to get selectable S equals U dot get component selectable. So we're going to get the selectable script from every single unit on there. Now we're going to have our first condition here. If S dot is hovered over equals false, and actually no ifs, ands, or buts about it, it's time to call S dot now hovering, and then so that will save us a little bit of update calculations doing it this way, but I don't really see a way here to check for things that are hovered to see if they are no longer hovered. So I'm going to go back to the selectable script. Unfortunately, kicking and screaming, I'm going to make an update function here, and we're going to see if is hovered over equals true. Then we will see if the mouse manager dot singleton dot units get hovered units dot contains this dot game object. If it doesn't, then we're going to want to say just stopped hovering, and that will change hovering over to I was going to say if hovering over. That will change it to false. And so this this line of code should not have to run very often, and this should not have to run for every single unit, every single frame. It should be only just be like the small amount of units that we're hovering over. So that minimizes the amount of stuff we have to put in our update functions. Unfortunately, we have to put some things in update. And let's see now if this convoluted scheme worked. All right, I'm going to move my mouse over, and wow, voila, hovering over, and it goes away. So that's terrific. We're still at over 300 frames, so but we don't have any fog of war and a lot of other stuff that is to come on here yet. The last thing I want to do in this tutorial is create a public game object selection indicator. it's going to be must drag and drop the child that is the selection indicator. In addition, I'm going to put child game objects only. It must be within the hierarchy of this unit. And I'm just now realizing that I am actually in the input manager script, or the mouse manager script. I want to be in the selectable script. So let's find out just before events. We're gonna put stuff here, and if we go check in our editor, this error message pops up: must drag and drop the child object that is the selection indicator. And we're gonna do that there. The thing goes away. I'm gonna create a public void function called show selection indicator. Well, the first thing we're going to do is selection indicator dot get component mesh render dot enabled equals true. And another function, public void hide selection indicator. And this time it's going to be false. Now that I've made these functions, I'm going to take the opportunity to attach it to the on selected function. We're going to show selection indicator. And then we're also going to subscribe on deselected. We're going to subscribe the hide selection indicator, and then do the same for on hovered over and on hovered over exit. And also, when the unit is first created, I'm going to use on awake. Ooh, awake. I am going to hide the selection indicator, because generally speaking, you don't start off with things selected. And then I'm going to take the opportunity to create a bunch of error statements whenever I stop playing the game by unsubscribing everything on disable. Those errors occur, I believe, because some scripts, the order in which they get removed from the scene or deleted occur before others get deleted. So I believe that the reason why it screams at me for anything input manager related is because it can't find the input manager when the game stops in order to take that off. I'm not sure if what all I just said was recorded or not, but basically I just added a bunch of unsubscribes and talked about why it's not really a problem when you stop playing, that it throws some null statements because now I do foresee a problem, which is why I'm going to go up to the is now hovering and make sure that we are not, scratch that, there might be instances where we still want to call on hovered over, but I'm going to go to the show selection indicator and hide selection indicator, and I'm going to make sure that because this could get called when it could be selected, but if we don't have the mouse over it, it's going to get turned off or turned on. Or you know what, I think this is mostly important for the hide. We don't want it hidden if the unit is selected. So if selected, we're going to return. And so now we should be able to select it, and the indicator will not disappear as soon as we move the mouse off of it. Alrighty, so I'm hovering over, I'm leaving. Now I'm going to click, and it should stay. And then now it's deselected. So, yeah, I'd say we have a pretty good start to the selection system in our game. P.S. As a side note, I got rid of all those pesky errors that were occurring every time I stopped playing by doing a null reference exception check. See, hey, does the input manager still exist? Okay, well, if it does, then we can unsubscribe. And I did that on the selectable and on the camera controller, and it's just going to be something I'm going to have to remember to do going forward when referencing other scripts and on disable. But the good news is my anecdotally diagnosed OCD will not be driven crazy every time I stop play and have to hit clear from all the worthless error messages. So that's a fun, sudden realization I just had on how to solve that problem. Alrighty, I look forward to making another video. Currently, I'm planning to make a selection manager and a selection panel. Sorry, scratch the selection panel, that's more for UI. A selection box where you can drag kind of like here in the editor, but in game. Take care until next time.